Okay, here's part two of this video about Johnny B. Goode, Chuck Berry. Um, as I was saying, there have been so many songs since Johnny B. Goode that have talked about this rise to fame and fortune through rock music. You can name many songs that as rock music progressed. It went from this early song in 1958, the Chuck Berry song, which was actually a celebration of music and of, you know, falling in love with music and becoming a star. To later, it became more of like a cautionary tale, like, do you really want, to be a star? Like if you I was mentioning Foreigner, Jukebox Hero. The Byrds had, I believe it was called Rock and Roll Star. There's a song by Bad Company called Shooting Star. It's also about Johnny, and probably a reference to Johnny B. Goode, and also probably a reference to Jimi Hendrix, who died young, who was like a shooting star, and so many others who rose quickly to fame and then died young. But Johnny B. Goode, at least, it actually does not even talk about him getting to fame. It's just saying his mother, is his biggest fan and support, and saying, you're going to be a star, kiddo. It's a really cool song, and it was maybe from a more naive time, not in a bad way, a more innocent time, the 50s, perhaps. And that's not really true. It probably was not any more or less innocent than any other time, but in certain ways, there was not this sense that rock and roll, the idea of the evils of rock and roll, and over time, there developed this idea of the Faustian pact with the devil, meeting the devil at the crossroads, and that went back before Chuck Berry too. But I think that rock becoming the devil's music, and the evils and to be cautious about it, developed over time, especially as young people died, young musicians died. And I think that the Chuck Berry song came out before Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and the Big Bopper died in that plane crash, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and it's also it's a song, it's definitely an American song in the sense of rising from humble beginnings to making your way from rags to riches, or from those humble beginnings to being a star, and to being getting out of poverty, which definitely, I think that was Chuck Berry's. I don't know if by that point he had become, he definitely was famous. Was he also rich? I don't know, but this song again was autobiographical. He was writing about himself, and he had become a star, and I'd like to know more about Chuck Berry's, where he came from in terms of his background, and also his dedication to the music, because he was such a great songwriter. He's still alive. Wow. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 86. By the way, Foreigner, who I think came out with that song right around that time that he was inducted. They still have not been inducted, as far as I'm aware. They have not been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which seems to be a travesty of justice. I don't know. I know, that a lot of people don't like Foreigner for whatever reason. But anyway, when I was growing up back in the 70s, the 80s, Foreigner was one of the biggest bands around. They were, in many people's eyes, they were up there with the greatest bands, the Stones and the Beatles and the Doors, Led Zeppelin. And maybe their music has not quite stood the test of time in the same way. But I would like to hear the rationale for not being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Maybe I'll get back to you on that, but I'm sure those of you who are listening are aware of the situation, so I might not have to go into it. I think the thing I want to point out is, rock and roll does not have to be, the rock and roll lifestyle and the rock and I think that Chuck Berry actually went to jail at one point. Something we could look up. I think it was for, a sexual misconduct. I know that one of the songs back in the 80s that they played on the radio, which My Ding-a-Ling, which is a great song. He hit a lot of references in his songs to things that he, couldn't say really on the radio, but he, alluded to things. This song, the only thing that I think he changed was the colored boy to country boy. And, imagine if John Denver had sung Thank God I'm a Colored Boy. That's a song you don't hear too much anymore, but it's a great song, Thank God I'm a Country Boy. And it... I think this has probably gone on too long. I'm going to end it here, but just to say that the gospel of rock, to me, what Chuck Berry, bottom line, is what he's getting at is just the love of the music and falling in love with the music, and if you love the music, people are going to love the music that you play, the music that comes through you. And people definitely love Chuck Berry. He was one of the true masters, up there with the greats, and one of the most influential rock and roll musicians ever. If there was no Chuck Berry, just like Buddy Holly, Chuck Berry, Buddy Holly, some of those early guys, including Elvis, of course. I know I don't know my rock and roll history that well, but I'm just saying that if it weren't for those guys, we would never have had some of the other artists that we also hold in such high esteem, and that we have even maybe forgot some of these artists like Chuck Berry and how influential they were back in their day, and how they influenced the young kids at the time, who later became, like, if you take the Beatles, how much the Beatles were influenced by Chuck Berry. Enough said. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned for the next tune that's coming soon. Rock on.